Hi everyone, I'm Ludo, and welcome to RenovHome. After finishing the floor above the front door, it's finally time to connect the two ground floor rooms by creating a new doorway. Well, at least on paper, it sounds simple. The doorway will lead into the room beneath that floor, the very first floor I rebuilt in this renovation series. As you can see from this model, the entrance floor, which sits above the cellar, is significantly higher than the floor in the room behind it. I set up a laser level to take reference points and measurements on both sides of this load-bearing wall. The challenge will be finding the right compromise to create a comfortable passage without ending up with your head brushing the floor above. I then use SketchUp to transfer all of these measurements and make sure this new opening is actually feasible. After discussing everything with the lead architect, it's finally time to get started. First, I need to clear enough space to work. Starting with this electric radiator I installed at the very beginning of the project, but which, in the end, was never actually used. Wait, what's hopping around in the room? A baby toad. They're pretty cute at that age. All right, little guy, off you go. On the other side, things are a bit of a mess. It's basically become my storage room. I move what I can, although I probably should have taken the time to remove everything instead of simply pushing it farther away. But that's one of my biggest flaws. Old habits die hard. Oh no. With my injured rib, here comes the dreaded sneeze. You start hurting just thinking about what's about to happen. It hurts before, it hurts during, and it definitely hurts afterwards. And with all this dust, I'm in for quite a few of them. I installed two adjustable props to relieve the load around the future doorway. When I rebuilt this floor, I added an extra reinforcement beam. I'll need to shorten its support because it's right in the middle of the future opening. I intentionally left it longer than necessary at the time, just in case I ever wanted to add another reinforcement later. Then it's time to bring out the demolition hammer. To make a doorway, you have to start by making a hole. I begin on this side because this is where I have the least headroom beneath the floor. I removed the stones across the entire width of the future opening, and even a little beyond, since I'll later have to rebuild the door jambs on both sides. Next, I move upstairs to knock the stones out from above and gain as much height as possible. The future lintel will need to sit as high as it can. deliberately allow a small natural arch to form. With an opening this narrow, I can safely get away with it. Even so, I support it with a few props to prevent any stone from deciding to come down and say hello. The goal isn't to stop a complete collapse, it's simply to prevent an individual block from breaking loose. Now, all that's left is to gradually work the opening downward. As you can see, I'm only dismantling the first face of the wall. Behind it is another wall of exactly the same thickness, facing the neighboring room. The stones interlock throughout the full thickness of the wall. Sometimes stones from one face extend toward the middle. Sometimes it's the stones from the opposite side. That's what gives the entire wall its strength. I'm using my little pry bar. It's basically my Swiss Army knife for dismantling stone walls. It's been about 10 days since I fell through the floor, so with blocks this heavy, I'm being extra careful. My ribs are still very sore, and I'm also trying not to accidentally kick one of the props. It may not be very obvious on camera, but you can now start to see the ends of the floor beams from the room on the other side, which also happen to form the ceiling of the cellar. I carefully locate the exact position of the beam that will sit directly above the future doorway. That allows me to place a support post down in the cellar, so the entire load isn't transferred onto that single beam. You can also see that this floor was probably rebuilt about 20 years ago, replacing the original round timber beams with square section beams. I keep another prop within arm's reach, just in case. Then I start working on the other side of the wall. Beneath all these layers of paint, I discover a cement render, and that's a completely different story. This stuff is unbelievably hard, so I bring out the rotary hammer. probably doesn't show in the edit, but I spent nearly 10 hours removing that render. Between the dust, the noise, and even with earplugs, it was absolute torture. Once the render is finally gone, I can open the wall from this side. It's much easier now that the stones are no longer locked in place by the opposite face. I use the props in different ways throughout the job. They're carrying almost no load. Their only purpose is to stop an individual stone from coming loose and landing on my head. Even after removing the largest stones, there's still an incredible amount of old mortar, sand, and smaller rubble left behind. Time to clean things up a little. I crushed the loose, crumbly mortar into smaller pieces. It'll come in handy later, as you'll see. Now I can fine-tune the bottom of the opening to make room for the future staircase connecting the two rooms. As I mentioned earlier, the beams in the higher room were replaced over 20 years ago. The original beam pockets were filled with cement mortar, which is easy to recognize by its gray color. Just like the render in the other room, it's rock hard. So I begin exposing the undersides of the beams and install two props more permanently beneath the floor. Later on, they'll obviously need a permanent support because they will no longer bear directly on the masonry. Now that I have full access, I can shorten these beams to allow the staircase to fit neatly within the thickness of the wall. Of course, Pokey comes over to see what I'm doing. He's probably still wondering why I'm making so much noise. Well,
I can walk through here now.
the main part of the opening is finally complete. I leave one prop in the middle of the wall to keep everything secure while I move on to the next stages. Next, I mark out the first steps so I can remove the thin lime screed in the lower room and reach a solid foundation for the future staircase. Finally, I separate the sandy soil from the small stones. It will always be useful for future work. Although, as you'll discover much later, this was actually just the beginning of a brand new passion, screening soil. And there we have it. This new opening is finally complete. There's still a lot of work ahead before it actually looks like a proper doorway, but reaching this stage already feels like a major milestone. In the next episode, we'll finally begin building the staircase that will permanently connect these two rooms. Thanks for following along on another adventure. I'm Ludo, and you've been watching Renov'Home.